unmute myself, please.
Is there anyone there?
There's no one here, but I just want to record for people that are. So plus, right? Plus is like amplifying. Whoops, amplifying or increasing the initial change. I don't like to use the word increasing because sometimes that change might actually be something going down, right? Like if your temperature is going down, and then when you get hypothermic, you go to a point where it actually keeps going down. So, but that's why I like amplifying. But amplifying or increasing.
I have a quick question. When was this curriculum updated?
Which this? Oh, 2017. Well, it seem old fashioned.
No, I was just wondering.
Yeah. I don't think there was big changes either from the previous one. So the other option is to decrease or diminish the initial change. And that's really what the positive and negative refer to.
How do you know how it looks like this?
Like on a graph, or what do you mean? Yeah, so it usually it'll be over time, how it changes. And then you could just look at whatever factor it might be, you know, let's just say ice cover. So we're starting with like a high amount of ice cover. And then as the climate warms, the ice decreases. And if you remember, the ice really reflects sunlight well. So when you lose ice, it absorbs more sunlight, and so it gets warmer. And so we actually lose ice cover. And so there's fewer ice cover, and then more absorption and a warmer temperature.
Negative is that, and then positive is like a wave.
So is this, remember the initial change was going down. So is this amplifying the initial change or decreasing the initial change? Yes, yeah, so that's why it's positive. Yeah. And it could be the opposite too. You could have it going this way, but basically it just keeps going in the same direction.
The negative one is the one like the wave.
The negative one is the wave, yeah, because that stabilizes. Negative feedbacks are good at stabilizing things. So I always think about body temperature. So I was just playing wiffle ball, so my body temperature was going up, and so I started to sweat. So sweating decreases that change, right? Brings it back down. And then if I get too cold, I'll start to shiver. And so this is the equilibrium, right? It's trying to keep your body at 98 degrees or whatever. Not actually 98 degrees, because that study was based on like middle-aged white guys, which is not a very good sample of the human population. Since most of us aren't middle-aged white guys, though I am. Token white guy here for you. Does that make sense? I really hate the words positive and negative because we always think positive is good and negative is bad, but it's really about how it's affecting that initial change, whether it's amplifying it or decreasing it. You also can look for the looping, right? If you see like the step-by-step ones, these will often be looping because it goes back to the first change, right? So if we were to draw out the ice melting, that leads to more open water, which is darker than ice. And that water absorbs more heat. And that heat melts more ice. So we're looping here, and we keep going.
What if it like, when it's talking about feedbacks, it says like describe the feedback? Would you say like if it's positive or negative, or what would you say? Like what kind of, like there's this question where it says what kind of system feedback is in this graph? Would you like, look at the graph and be like, oh, it's positive or oh, it's negative?
Yeah, so I'd be looking for the shape of the graph. If it's making a wave, it's negative. And you could say it's negative because it's stabilizing. It's negative because the change is decreasing instead of amplifying.
Are you gonna do any graphs like this?
Oh God.
I hope not, because I don't know.
That's a really weird graph.
Okay.
Where's
then
it from?
probably
Where's it
not
from?
then.
Probably not. Yeah, where's that one from?
This is just some of the past ID.
Oh, do you know what year?
I think 2015. So maybe it's too late.
Yeah, they've changed them since then. I see it kind of way more like this, or like an actual graph.
If it's like this though, would that be positive then? Because it's looping back.
Yeah, you might want to be careful though, because you could actually make a looping one with your body temperature. So if I get warmer, then I sweat, and then it cools.
No, we can't.
What? Right? So then it comes back to normal.
It's negative.
Yeah, you have to read it closely, right?
Wait, how is that negative though if it's like looping back to the original?
Yes.
That's why it's over. That's why it's.
You got to think, what's actually the initial change here? What was actually? Where's my other marker? What is the change? Which box is showing the change?
Warm and cool.
Warm. This one's actually your initial change.
Oh, the
And then so when you see that, oh, now it's cooling, that's how you know that it's negative, because those
Then
are
it doesn't it go back to warm though?
this is just your body temperature. And then if it warms, because you could have, if you get too cold, then you will shiver.
Shiver.
I've just seen them kind of drawn like this before.
The top of it.
Wait, I'm confused though because isn't like a positive feedback loop always like kind of like starting over from where you began and just like looping over and over again?
Well, in order to be the positive feedback, it should be goes to those warm after sweat.
Yeah. You just want to find out like where the change is.
There's only 3 variables in a positive.
They can be very complicated.
Are you?
I would say just to like talk yourself through it, right? Just like actually think through each step and then look for how it's changing. And does it keep changing in the same way or does it change in a different way? Does that make sense? Yeah. Yeah, and if you have to like tell yourself a story, you know, as you do it, for sure. I feel like it's more easy to understand like through stories than through like, you know, actually graphing them out. But
How many questions are going to be
on our paper 1 trial, there was only 1 question. Did you notice that? It was like 1A and then 1AI, 1AI, 2, like, and then 1B and then 1C, 1D.
Yeah, there's no like, multiple choice.
And we don't need to know like the equations for like natural increase rate.
No, you do not have to calculate any of those.
Okay.
You do have to talk about them. You don't have to calculate.
It's actually done ready, right?
Yeah?
Can we like go through questions ourselves?
No.
Questions?
No.
Why? I feel like it'll just be helpful for us that way we're not going to learn nonsense.
Yeah, but you have no idea what's on the real IB exam. So that would be very helpful if I tailored your knowledge specifically for what's on it.
What if we don't have the IB exam?
Then, well, would you guys have a feeling either way? Would you be happy or sad?
Happy.
Oh,
So I feel like this is such a good time for us to review knowledge that we need to know versus wasting our time.
well, if you do have to take them, then you need to know it all.
But we'll review again like around that time. So I feel like right now we should.
Yeah, I know, but the idea is that this is like the real thing, but not actually. So that's why I'm making it like the real thing.
Can we go over what is the exact definition of biodiversity?
Yeah, let's start all those bios, huh? Anyone want to give it a stab?
Biodiversity.
The
Uh-huh.
different amount of species in an area. And there can be richness and evenness.
Yes.
In an area. I would mention the other two types of biodiversity as well, though.
Genetic diversity.
And also be measured, yep, in genetic diversity or,
Habitat diversity.
Hello.
Wait, side question.
side question.
Would I have to specify that I'm in that species biodiversity in my IA? Or would that be like implied?
Might as well specify it. Yeah, a good way to think when you're writing these IAs is to just imagine that the person reading it is really stupid. So over-explain it rather than under-explain it, I would say.
And what are factors that like affect biodiversity? Like what could make one place have a lot of it versus not at all?
I would say if this is a multi-point question too, to include what Emily just said about richness and evenness. Since we can look at that for species diversity. And it really makes a big difference. So what affects the amount of biodiversity? Any ideas?
Factors.
Habitat fragmentation.
Yeah, sure. The quality of habitat. Is it whole or fragmented? How about like before even people showed up? Why are certain areas really biodiverse and other ones are not that biodiverse?
Soil richness?
The area.
Yeah,
like
quality of
the
soil.
biome,
The area, what?
Like the biome you're in.
Yeah,
Like
type of biome. And what were the factors that determine which biome you're in?
Temperature.
And there's another
Biotic
one.
factors. Abiotic factors.
They're both actually abiotic, which determine the biome. Temperature and,
climate. No.
yeah, something about climate,
Weather.
something about weather.
Um,
Think about the different biomes. What are some examples of biomes?
the
Tundra,
Forest.
rainforest, desert. We got our temperate forests, cooler forests, like in most of America. You got your temperate grasslands and you got your savannas. Oh, precipitation. Yeah. Yeah, right. Yeah, so a lot of times, whoops. If you have something that increases speciation, so like natural barriers are really good at amplifying speciation. You'll tend to see more biodiversity there.
Factors that
Influence, sorry. Factors that influence biodiversity. So natural barriers might be things like, islands, of course. That's why we see so much biodiversity in the Galapagos, in Indonesia, the Malay Archipelago. Mountains and rivers. Actually, in the Amazon, the rivers are so big that it kind of cuts the forest up into little chunks, and like monkeys can't cross the river, so they actually almost act like islands. Cool.
So you know how Sky Islands, how
Mhm.
do those animals survive?
What do you mean survive?
Like, how do they survive?
Well, they just find food and they eat it, and then they mate and reproduce, and then they're good.
But isn't it so small? Their niche isn't small.
Oh. Yeah, that's actually, do you remember we did the size of the islands and the number of species going there? Yeah, so like smaller patches tend to have fewer species. In most of those cases, there's probably enough room, but for a species that needs a bigger habitat, like a jaguar, you know, that's kind of why they're way more transient, but yeah. Yeah, the Skylines is cool because like those forests are way up there and then there's deserts in the rest of Tucson. But during the last ice age, it was a lot wetter here. So those forests were probably actually all over Tucson. So then everyone could go in between. And then as it dries out, the forests just go to the tops and then everyone's stuck at the top. Pretty cool, right? Yeah. That's actually how there's one canyon with natural palm trees in Arizona. Like when you're in Phoenix and everywhere, all those palm trees are planted. But there's this one tiny canyon where there's like palm trees and it's like just wet enough and just cool enough. And basically they're remnants from the last ice age. Like back when the climate was wetter, there's palm trees all over the place. And then they dried up and then that's like the only pocket where they could survive. So cool. Great. Other questions on biodiversity maybe? Over here, or biomes.
How would we define a biome? Would you say like different, like what's a word without using the biome word?
So it goes niche biome ecosystem. Right?
No.
Oh,
Niche, ecosystem and biome.
Oh, so biome is made up of ecosystems.
A biome is a collection of ecosystems. Just any old collection.
that have the similar precip and temperature.
Yeah, similar climatic conditions. Oops. Climatic conditions.
Well, then can you justify the size of like a range of niche and ecosystem? Like which one is bigger?
I mean, a niche is like such a variable idea, right? Like a niche for something like the Page Spring snail is this one tiny spring in Arizona, whereas the niche for a raven is like the whole northern hemisphere, because they can live almost anywhere. Yeah. So it really, really depends on your species and whether they're like generalists or specialists.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, biomes are collections of ecosystems, which is why you can have a lot of different ecosystems that are all considered the same biome. So we're in the desert, right? The desert biome. But there's actually 4 different deserts in the US. Anyone know any of their names? Sonoran Desert, yep, down here in Phoenix. The Mojave, which is over by Vegas. There's like the Great Basin Desert up in Nevada, some in Utah, and then the Chihuahuan Desert. I can't spell Chihuahuan. Oh my God. There's like a bunch more U's and H's and N's and stuff. You know, Chihuahuas? Yeah, that's where that comes from.
So what's the difference between an ecosystem and a niche?
An ecosystem is just all the living parts of an environment with all the abiotic factors as well.
And a niche isn't, it's just the biotic factors?
A niche is for a specific organism.
Oh,
Yeah, so we have a niche as humans. Other animals have a different niche. And we all live in ecosystems together.
What makes the Mojave and the Great Basin different and different from Nevada?
This one's colder. Usually it's vegetation type, so this one has Joshua trees. The Sonoran has, of course, God, I forgot their name for a second. Saguaro. Yeah, it's funny. We always use the saguaro cactus for the desert, but it's only this desert that actually has them. Most of the deserts out here don't.
So the ecosystem, like the way to define which one is based on the plantation.
The plants, yeah. Vegetation communities is what we usually say. Yeah. Plantation makes people think about slavery. Yeah, so these are defined, generally they're defined by vegetation type. Why would you want to define things by vegetation types instead of animals? Exactly, animals move around. Plants don't usually move around. Yeah, and then an ecosystem again is just the living parts of the environment and the abiotic factors. Like the temperature, like the precipitation, like the sunlight, like the altitude. Yeah. Right.
What is let me go. Be a charismatic species?
What does it mean to be charismatic? Have like a lot of charisma.
Yeah, a lot of people expect perception of
I mean, really, it's like popular having charisma. Like Barack Obama, just oozing charisma, right? You just like watching his speech, and you're like, oh yeah, dude. Yeah, so that's the charismatic species. They're the ones that are like really popular. They're really cool. They're really cute a lot of the time. Yeah. And just use my ecology professor's terminology. So charismatic species he would refer to as the oh yeah, he would just say the sexy charismatic megafauna. Megafauna meaning what's fauna? Flora and fauna. Which one's plants?
Oh.
Flora. Remember, fawn is like a deer. That's how I remember fauna. And then mega just means like big. So like elephants are super awesome, but mice are terrifying and disgusting, right? Pandas are super cool, but skunks are terrible. Yeah, those are the charismatic ones. What do we care about charismatic species?
Because they're aesthetic.
Exactly, right? They get people to care about the environment. Yeah. If you're like, hey, help us save this really ugly fish, they're like, no thanks. Cool.
There's like a charismatic species for a while.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. Like now there's almost the opposite where people like species because they look weird and they're really ugly.
And then what's the keystone?
Oh, maybe let's do some examples too. Keystone species. So our examples were like elephants, whales, even to a certain extent, wolves these days, right? People's opinions have changed.
Mhm.
Pandas. Anyone remember keystone species? Like the keystone in an arch. That was a shrug. Basically, those are species that have a disproportionate effect on the environment. So elephants will dig watering holes, which other species will use. They will clear trees and make savannas. Sea otters are another really common example. So they eat urchin, eat sea urchins, which allows kelp forests to grow. We looked at wolves and cougars as a keystone species. Remember how? Something with wolves and rivers and plants. Basically, the wolves eat elk, and they make them move around a lot. Without wolves, the elk will just hang out in one place and just eat everything around them. So this makes the elk move more, and then the elk browse less. They eat less vegetation. And that allows a nice riparian community to grow up around the rivers. Yeah. So like in Yellowstone, they released the wolves back, and all of a sudden all these great trees and stuff started growing back, even though they've been gone for decades. It actually can change the shape of the rivers too, because those plants help prevent erosion. Nice. Other types of species. There's flagship, an umbrella species. Flagship is kind of like charismatic. The way I always remember flagship species, it's like the one you would want to put on your flag. You know, it's like the panda for the WWF logo. World Wildlife Fund. It's a classic logo too, where they use like negative space. Seen that, right?
Oh, I think so, yes.
Yeah, so when I was a kid, there you go, WWF. Used to be the World Wrestling Federation, but then the wildlife company was like, hey, can you change it? And they're like, okay, sure. But yeah, there's their logo. It's changed, but this is my favorite. I actually saw a lady in Malawi that had that shirt. I had to get a picture with her. Okay, umbrella species. I'm gonna recall what that means.
Umbrella covers.
Yeah, an umbrella covers, so conservation of an umbrella species should do what?
Oh, like it protects one animal and it protects like basically the rest.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it protects other species too. Almost literally like an umbrella, right? Usually they use pandas as an umbrella species, but I just saw an interesting study which was arguing that they're not really that effective. But other animals like tigers can be really good umbrella species. Generally, these will be species that require big habitat because you need to protect a lot of land. Yeah, here you go. You got your, oops. Right over here, we got our puma holding an umbrella over the other animals, or this tiger. Cool. Should we do the other bios?
Okay, how do you remember the one? Will we need to remember the different type of soil horizons?
How do I remember the soil horizons?
And will we need to know it?
I'm pretty sure there's a soil horizon question on there. Seem to recall a diagram of the soil horizons. Anyone remember my trick for remembering it?
It's like, oh, all
Open
burning
budget.
children die or something. That's what it is.
All burning children die. Oh, geez. So the way I remember it, O stands for organic, and I just remember that one's always on the top. And then we got A, B, and C, and there's actually an E somewhere in there.
It's in between.
OAE.
Mhm.
What is between the B
And then below the C is one more layer. R for rock. Yeah. So the mnemonic that Kaylin's friend uses is open all entryways to butt cheeks.
Open.
rhymes?
Hmm?
Keep forgetting the R.
Well, you just remember bedrock's down there at the bottom. It can't be in the middle.
What would you add to
You
that?
can't do a mnemonic device and not include all
All right, open all entryways to butt cheeks right now.
Nice. Nice.
Or you can come up with your own. Oh, Alec eats burning children regularly.
Why me?
Because your name starts with an A.
Like, how do you remember like what each one is? Like, I did that. But
Yeah, so it's kind of just easiest to sort of think about how the layers are interacting with each other. That's sort of how I do it. So I kind of fill in what I know for sure to begin with. So which ones do we know for sure?
R, then wrong.
R is bedrock, yep.
O is or A is the rich part, the
Yeah, the topsoil, right?
ground,
What color is this usually?
like dark brown.
Yeah. Why is it darker?
Because it's rich with nutrients.
Because it's like,
Yeah.
it has a lot of water and
Okay. And then so you can either kind of go down or you can kind of go up. So let's try to go up. What would
Is it C like crust?
it's like turning into bedrock.
opposite actually?
Oh.
Bedrock becomes the sea horizon. So this is like basically weathered bedrock. Actually, I can show you guys a picture, maybe. It's kind of funny. They call it like decomposing granite. I guess there's probably microbes that are doing some stuff, but whoops. Come on, where's my, there we go. Yeah, so, oh, what? This is not helpful at all. Why are you showing me your backyard? Oh, God. Anyway, as the rocks weather, they kind of become soil. Jeez Louise. Or you could just go outside and take a rock and break it into pieces and it becomes sand, right? It's really easy to see that here. So yeah, C is basically your weathered bedrock, not really a lot of nutrients in there. It's just kind of, you know, the building blocks of soil, if you will. So then we just got two more.
The depleted soil right under the topsoil.
Mm-hmm. Depleted of minerals.
And then isn't it like, because that's depleted, that one has more nutrients, B? Like
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so B is actually enriched from rainfall usually. Oops. So it's leaching nutrients from above. Remember, when there's lots of rain, the rain will drag all those nutrients down. So B is kind of getting enriched from above. Yeah. That's like when I'm doing it in class, that's what I'm thinking as I go through. I'm like, okay, I know the organic and I know the topsoil and I know the bedrock. And then this is made from broken down bedrock. And then you just deplete and then re-enrich.
The most common ones are O, A, and B.
Really depends on where you are. Yeah, it's highly variable.
here, it's like the top, it's O,
It's like
E, and R, right?
tiny O, like maybe like a tiny little A, and then mostly like, yeah. Okay. I'm gonna erase this side. Mhm. Should we do the rest of the bios now? Oh no, I'm running out of cleaner. This board never erases.
Why is this board like that?
No.
I've never seen any of the other boards need that much marker.
Yeah, right. What's your problem, board? Come on. Okay. Let's see, which one should we do first? Biodegradation. And degradation means, did I spell that wrong? I did.
Degradation.
Degradation. Oops. To degrade. Is to bring your grade down, to degrade.
To deplete the biomes.
I guess kind of like deplete, but more like breaking down. This is breaking down of organic matter. Like detritus.
Can you not be detritivores too?
Detritivores?
Yeah.
I guess they would sort of be doing that too, but sorry, I'm just verifying this because I think this is in the water unit. So I just want to see if it's specifically about water. Biodegradation of organic material, 227. Utilizes oxygen. Okay, yeah. Yeah, so it seems like this is usually discussed in water. But really, it's the same process that happens on land, right? It's just like compost, but it's happening in water. But this is directly related to BOD, which stands for
Bio.
sometimes you'll actually see biological, but IB uses biochemical. Yeah. So these are organisms, right, that are breaking this down, decomposers. And those decomposers need to need oxygen, yes. So in order for that stuff to compost, in order for that stuff to break down, it requires O2. So the biochemical oxygen demand is the amount of O2. The amount of dissolved oxygen. To break down the detritus. So more detritus means,
Higher BOD.
yeah, more oxygen. Higher biochemical oxygen demand. Mhm.
So then the BMP makes the less.
This is just the amount of oxygen it would take to get rid of it all. Okay, like think about it this way, like I got like 8 pizzas. I need this many people to eat these 8 pizzas. All those people gotta breathe while they're eating the pizzas. So this is the amount of oxygen it takes for them to sit in there and eat the pizzas. You're like, why am I talking about oxygen?
I know why we're talking about oxygen.
Why are we talking about oxygen?
Because there's oxygen in the water.
Yeah, and so what happens if there's a really high biochemical oxygen demand?
Red zone.
Exactly. These can create anoxic environments. Dead zones. Way more of an issue in aquatic ecosystems because there's less exchange in general of oxygen. If you imagine on Earth, like all the atmosphere is connected, so all the oxygen moves around. But if you're in like a pond, the only way you can get oxygen is basically from things photosynthesizing or from someone splashing into the water. Yeah, so swamps usually have really high BOD. And because of that, they're really good at preserving stuff, actually. You can see a lot of anoxic environments. I think it was in your guys' class when we looked at the petrified wood, right?
Just wasn't it like
No, it's in Arizona. Well, it's actually a similar environment to Louisiana, but
Wait, so are you saying that it's good to have dead zones?
No.
Like
No.
anoxic? So why did we say swamps are really good at preserving things because they have a high BOD?
Oh. Preserving, like they don't rot, they don't break down, they don't decompose. They're not biodegrading. And that's why you get petrified wood. So a tree will fall into a swamp, and that swamp is like an anoxic environment. So there's nothing that can break it down. So instead of actually rotting, all the wood just gets replaced by like minerals over time, and then you get like really freaking cool examples. Yeah, has anybody been to Petrified Forest National Monument in eastern Arizona? Oh my God, it's so cool. Oh, it's a park actually. Yeah, it's amazing. You can just see like whole logs of this stuff just chilling in the desert. And so that's a direct result of an anoxic environment. There was not enough oxygen to break down the trees, so the trees just stayed there.
And then do you need water for that? Or
Oh, it's probably really waterlogged. Yeah, no, these trees were dead when they fell into the swamp. That's why they're all laying down. They like fell into the swamp, and then usually they like break down, but there wasn't enough oxygen, so they just stayed trees. Until over time, like they were just replaced, the tree cells were replaced with minerals, basically. So cool. I love it there. Okay.
Wait, can you explain to me like what about those swamps? I mean, high BOD, but what make it preserve?
What makes it?
Like swamp preserve.
Oh yeah, because the BOD is so high that it actually will use up the oxygen, and so then nothing else can decompose stuff. Yeah, you almost like create like almost like a dead zone, sort of. Yeah. And it really helps that swamps are usually so like still and everything. Nice. Is this it's just a little DoorDash for UBS. Yo, can I place an order? What's your app? Yeah, so that's basically why. Yeah, they kind of don't have enough oxygen to actually decompose the stuff. Yeah, so not a good place to stash a body. I'm thinking about doing that.
what's the difference like between biomagnification and biochemical?
I'm just about to do that one. Anyone want to try to give it a go? Distinguishing the two? Bioaccumulation and biomagnification.
Like pollutants getting more pollutants for accumulation and then like,
Okay, well, I'm gonna
wait,
get
I don't know. I
Thank
feel
you,
like
Caleb.
they do the same thing. Because magnification and accumulation are both like getting bigger, right?
It's super frustrating because they're like totally connected and like basically they're just like two slight variations of the same process. Yeah. I would just think about that word accumulate versus magnify.
Biomagnification, that's like the increase increase in like the concentration of the pollutant, right?
Yeah.
And then bioaccumulation is just like that it
Staying the
increases
same.
with the trophic levels.
Where is it magnified? Where is the highest concentration?
At the top of the
Yeah, so this is the one about trophic levels. But then you might ask why, concentration of pollutant.
So what's accumulation?
What's the opposite of accumulation? Like if it wasn't bioaccumulating, what would happen?
They go away, they don't remain the same.
Yeah, exactly. It would not be absorbed. It would like decompose or it would biodegrade, right? So these are pollutants that persist or pollutants that stay in our tissue.
So that one doesn't go up trophic levels.
No, see, this is why it's so confusing, right? So like, because these pollutants don't biodegrade, they stay in your tissue. So every time they get eaten, they magnify in concentration, right? So this is basically,
Bioaccumulation happens first, but then as that thing gets eaten, then it happens biomass.
yeah, it's like such a subtle little difference, but see this term. These are persistent organic pollutants. The 10% rule is just about energy in general.
That's the thermodynamics.
Yeah, second law. So persistent organic pollutants versus the like biodegradable pollutants. Does that make sense? So if a pollutant was biodegradable, you can see how it wouldn't bioaccumulate and then it wouldn't even stay in the food chain. So maybe your body would actually destroy the pollutant. Maybe you would defecate the pollutant out. Maybe you would pee it out. But it doesn't stay in your tissue, so it can't get passed on. Yeah, I've actually seen other like sites or sources that basically say they're the same thing because they're so interrelated. But basically, this just means that it won't biodegrade. And this means that since it doesn't biodegrade, as you go up the trophic level, it amplifies, increases.
Can we go over the pyramids, like the pyramid of numbers?
We had numbers, which measures
Population.
The number of
the number of individuals, the population of each trophic level. Excuse me. What else do we have?
Biomes.
Pyramid of biomass. Measuring
So the size, the mass.
the mass, yeah. Generally, they do the dry mass of organisms. So if you were to collect a bunch of plants, you would actually dry them out before weighing them. Any ideas why you would do that? Why would you not want to include the water?
Because it adds more weight.
Yeah, and different plants will hold different amounts of water. Yeah, so like a lot of the cactuses here can hold lots and lots of water, versus other plants might not hold much at all. So we're just curious about how much plantiness there is, not how much water they're holding. And of course, this is measured in. How do you measure mass? Per. Where are we?
Per meter.
Yeah, per your area. How big your area is. Is it the size of EVS? Is it just a tiny little patch of farm? Cool. And then our last one. And productivity.
Isn't it like combined with previous?
Not quite. What is productivity measuring? Like what are they trying to do? To change in
Mass.
yeah. Change in biomass, how much stuff grows. Change in biomass over time, right? Over a year or so, how much has grown? Does it make sense? Our units for productivity. Kilograms per meter squared?
Yeah.
Per year, why do we need per year? Because what? Yeah, because it's the change. Cool. And certain ecosystems have different levels of productivity, right? Like what's an ecosystem with a lot of productivity? Things grow really fast. Yeah, usually those kinds of communities. What about the rainforest might make them productive? Precipitation, soil. There's yeah, maybe. What else in the rainforest? Rainforest. Yeah, precipitation is a huge one. This is why there is very little productivity in the desert. We have really good temperatures. You actually could grow year round, but there's just so little water that stuff can't really grow that much. Yeah. Cool. Okay. We have not done them yet. Should we?
Yeah.
Shall we? EIA standing for Environmental Impact Assessment. What do we mean by environmental impact? How much our project, our development is impacting the environment. And what does assessment mean? Yeah, what does that mean though? Whoops, two S's. Yeah, we're gonna see how much it'll be impacted, right? Yeah. So measures potential impacts. Whoops. Potential. Potential of projects, developments, etc. A lot of times they'll have several options. So you can kind of see how those different options would have different impacts. And then usually you compare it to no change, right? What types of impacts might they measure? Anyone remember from the document? Huh?
Biodiversity.
Yeah, so this looks at biodiversity. Yeah. What else might they look at? Think about when they're trying to build a bridge over a creek or build the roads. Well, this could be affected.
Natural. Like water and flooding.
Yep. You would look at the water resources. Is it going to affect the quality? Is it going to affect the quantity? Yeah. You might even just go through to the ESS units. What other units do we have?
Oh, atmosphere.
Yeah, how does it affect the atmosphere? Is it going to add pollutants, you know?
Soil.
How is it going to affect the soil? Yeah.
Could you also do like natural disasters, things like that? Like floods or.
Yeah, depending on the project, right? So a lot of times they like to build houses near a river, but you're actually building on the floodplain. So usually the floodplain would help slow and spread the water out. But if you build on it, then you just speed the water around and you make the floods worse. Yeah. It might make it more susceptible to wildfires, maybe. A lot of times they'll look at erosion.
Is ENV the value systems?
ENV?
Yeah, what does it stand for? Environmental.
Yeah.
Environmental value systems?
No, just environmental.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm just using shorthand. Nice trick for when you have to take notes in college is to like make up little shorthands for yourself. That's why I always do species.
SPE.
You guys know this one? W/.
With.
Or W/O?
Without.
Without. I like to use a lot of arrows instead of stupid little filler words like to and of and, you know. Or like an up arrow. I think I did that somewhere. For increase or a down arrow for decrease. Cool. Other questions on environmental impact assessments?
So like in the thing, we'll have to like discuss the impacts or will we have to like evaluate?
You would probably talk more about like what these are and why they're used. Yeah, and then like sort of evaluate their usefulness. Yeah, these are like kind of different in each country. Like in the US, we have the National Environmental Policy Act, which says that anytime the government wants to build something, they have to make an environmental assessment before they do it. A lot of times they'll just make the assessment and then they'll just do it anyway. Yeah. So it really depends on the country, like how strict they are. In the US, they generally have it open for public comment, which is pretty cool. So that one in Sedona was actually up for public comment for a while. And basically, you just hear what people have to say about it. Good chance to be like, hey, this is terrible, don't do this. It was so interesting working for the Park Service too, because like a lot of times there's like this like bureaucracy that they can't really fight against, and like they just have to like sort of do things because like that's the government, but they don't necessarily want to do them because they care about Grand Canyon. So like, you guys ever heard of Grand Canyon Trust? This is a nonprofit in Flagstaff, and a lot of times they'll sue the Park Service for like damages they're doing to the environment, and sometimes it's like sort of like on the DL, the superintendent was like, yeah, we'll like ask them to sue us, So we don't have to do something that we don't have a say over. It's kind of hilarious. Yeah, because I mean, like, the government works from like top down, right? So when Trump appointed the new head of the Department of Interior, he could say all this policy and then they just have to follow it. Just like so annoying. Okay. What else? I think we have Biotic Index on there. A Biotic Index, I always remember these by just thinking of indicator species.
Got it. I just need to go get the berry to find.
Okay. Indicator species, what are those?
Exactly.
A Biotic Index?
Yeah.
Yeah, what are they indicating? What does indicate mean?
Use.
Not quite. Dang, yeah, that's. Yeah, so the way I memorize most of this stuff is just by thinking about the words themselves. Indicate means point out or show. Close, we're looking at species to show the species are indicating something. Yeah, an index is like a measurement, basically. What are we measuring, though? What are we trying to see? Life. We're looking at life to see. Exactly, yeah. So this measures environmental quality, basically. Or it can be like levels of pollution a lot of the time. I'm going to be big enough. Sort of, a little bit, kind of. So yeah, you can see here the different species and then how much pollution they can live in. And so which ones indicate the cleanest water? Stonefly, how do you know that they like the cleanest water? Yeah, so the dirtiest water would be? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Biotic Index is like a really cool way, instead of actually sampling the water and sending it to a chemical lab and testing for all the pollutants, you just look at what's living there. You say, okay, I got lots of sludge worms and maggots, this is really polluted. This other pond has lots of nymphs, so it's pretty clean. Oops, I didn't actually share that. There you go, the indicator species. They also do this with lichen, where different lichen can tolerate different levels of air pollution.
What are the indicator species for everything?
We have actually a lot of these. Most of these probably. What? No, we have stone. Yeah, so sludge worms can tolerate a wide variety, right? So you might see them in clean water. But if you're also seeing nymphs, stonefly nymphs, dragonfly nymphs, that means it's also clean. Yeah. And you wouldn't have to say specifically what to do, you would just have to talk in general about how you would use this.
Okay, so a lot of the things like on the quiz or the exam are like how you would use the thing, not exactly applying it.
Yeah, or like they'll give you a species and they would say, how would you measure this species? And you can have like 10 different possible answers, kind of thing.
Have you chose the marking sum yet?
Uh-huh.
Are we still sure that we don't have to go over CBR, CDR?
I am sure that you do not need to calculate them.
Dang it.
Caleb, are you sure you're not willing to give us a note card at the bare minimum?
Oh, I'm sure.
Are you sure?
I'm sure.
Do we need to know any other equations, like do we have to calculate anything else?
Hmm.
Well, like wait, what about input, output, and like respiration? Sort of.
Yeah, or like the Lincoln index.
Yeah, there's no Lincoln index calculations. I know that for sure. I'm going to give you guys the IB curve too. So you just need to get like a 40%. Yeah.
40%. That's also ESS.
It's like a 4.
But like a percentage, like as a DBS grade.
I could look it up. I have a Google Sheet somewhere.
And we need to know like the photosynthesis and respiration equation.
Oh yeah, definitely. You guys got that though.
Wait, what do we need to know?
Photosynthesis and respiration equation. These are another ones where I kind of just think through it to remember how it
Do we need
goes.
to like do the balancing out of it?
No.
No, dang it. That would be silly.
That was just for fun. So we have some inputs and we have some outputs.
Water.
Nah.
For which where? Water goes somewhere.
Photosynthesis.
Some of them.
CO2.
And glucose are the inputs for respiration,
Which one?
or outputs for respiration. No, that's
The outputs
Okay.
of
So
photosynthesis.
let's go.
How about this? How about this? Each person write down what they think it is, and we'll see who's closest.
Write down.
You can use the board if you want. Yeah. Oh, you got it on his sleeve. He has a green one, yeah. No peeking.
No, you're really remember this.
Or are you? Yeah, that's actually just like the water vapor condensing. It's so cool. First of all, markers. Here we go.
And it's like the top lot of smoke. You go up twice as much as smoke.
Well, no, you blow out the same amount of smoke, but there's just water vapor too. It just looks like smoke. It's not actually smoke. But yeah, that's one of my favorite scenes from Cool Runnings back in the day.
Oh, I love that movie.
You remember when they first get to Calgary or whatever? So fun. CO2 plus H2O.